I do want to bring in Gerard Filitti, the senior counsel for the Lawfare Project, to help break it all down. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. And first off, I just want to go back to basics here. What is meant by all of this, and really how realistic is it?
Well, what's meant by all of this is that it's very difficult to properly vet people from a lot of countries before they come to the United States. The visa application process or humanitarian relief under refugee status, you need to know who is actually coming into the country. In the U.S., in the Western world, we have criminal background checks, we have computerized records. But in a lot of countries like Afghanistan, like in the Middle East and Africa, you don't have those reliable centralized databases. So when someone presents themselves as being John Doe, you need to actually verify who this person is, what their background is, and whether they're eligible for entry. What President Trump is saying is that there's been a rush to bring people into the country without doing slow, careful vetting, especially from countries where they don't have those centralized records, and that needs to be paused. Whether he can do so permanently, we can discuss in a moment, but that is something that is a national security issue from the Trump administration's perspective.
And that brings me to what I wanted to ask you. What kind of legal issues are posed here? Because we've heard from reporters that have looked into it with our Fox 5 DC team, and they're saying they expect legal challenges here. What sort of legal issues could arise?
The president can institute a pause on immigration, on visas, on travel, but it has to be a temporary pause. He cannot unilaterally permanently ban someone from a group of people from coming into the country. So while courts are deferential to national security considerations under the Immigration and Naturalization Act, specifically Section 212, which is what the president would invoke, that does not give him the mechanism for a permanent suspension. He needs to work with Congress on that. So what legal challenges you would see are from immigrants' rights groups and from probably congressional figures on the left who want to push back on any sort of permanent ban and put forth the need to work with Congress and the legislative system in order to actually control permanent migration issues.
Are there potential impacts here when you talk about the labor market, the economy in the U.S. as all of this does progress? If everything does kind of play out as President Trump wants it to, what are those ramifications?
Well, all of this depends on how broad we interpret President Trump's language about third world. If we're talking strictly about countries that we have a rational basis for suspecting that terrorists may be coming over the border, that's a more limited pool. But if we're adding to this Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, where we do have a lot of people who come on visas to work in labor in our country, in factories and in fields in agriculture, that presents a problem. That slows down our economy. And because our economy also relies on long-term immigration, because our birth rate has been declining, it does have a long-term impact on the ability of the economy to sustain our population as we get older. So all of this comes back to how broad President Trump means when he says third world countries, whether it's limited to countries that sponsor or support terrorism or more broadly to other countries.
How do you go about, I guess, a safeguard to ensure that all of this is, assuming we don't know just yet how broad of a pause this would be and how long it'll last, all of that. But how do you go about safeguarding this and making sure that it kind of plays out the way that it's supposed to or the way that it's meant to?
Well, we need to look to the legal system. For example, if President Trump wants to remove people or strip them of their status within the United States, they're entitled to due process within the immigration court system. So we want to make sure that that's followed, that they get their day in court, that they get to argue for asylum or any issues to question and challenge issues about their status. We also need Congress to step in and make sure that laws are there that either give the president the authority for long-term bans or long-term sanctioning on people from third world countries or whatever countries he may choose, or that Congress steps up and creates new mechanisms to make sure that people who come here are properly vetted. And that's also a legal challenge to the president if his orders are too broad. So ultimately, we're looking at the legal system to make sure that the Immigration and Naturalization Act is properly enforced without the president or the administration going too far.
Any misconceptions that you think people might have about all of this as a whole, as the information comes out ever since President Trump made the announcement, so to speak, on Thanksgiving? There's been things all over social media with people saying this, and this, and it's always, I would say about half the time, not true. So what kind of misconceptions do you think people have that you want to clear up for folks watching?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that all of this happens in a vacuum and that there's no legal oversight. There is. When you want to remove someone or strip them of their status, whether it's a green card or a visa or a refugee status, you need to go through the legal system. So it's no one is rounding up people and putting them on a plane back to Afghanistan or anywhere else. That's simply not going to happen. The other misconception is that people have been vetted when they came to the United States. We're seeing that that's not the case, and that there has been a rush over the years to allow certain classes of people from countries that have experienced disasters, whether political, economic, or military, to come quickly to the United States. That has not always resulted in accurate vetting. So the two biggest misconceptions are that everyone who is here is entitled to be here, and at the same time that people who are being deported or face deportation are not getting due process.
All right, Gerard, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break it down. We're going to watch as all of this does play out here. My last question for you here, actually, what should we be watching for in the coming days, hours, all of it, as we see where this goes?
We should be watching for whether President Trump issues an executive order about this or whether this is something that is going to come from the State Department from Secretary Rubio. And we should be looking at the precise language that's being used to kind of narrow down the parameters of this idea, whether this is going to be limited to countries like Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq, or it's going to be broader. That will give us a sense of where we go from here.
Gerard, thank you again for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.